autumn in Mexico were working within the Sonora area, and when our problems with encroachment by the ranchers and miners and big landowners came about, and it was something that was kind of overwhelming for the autumn, because at that time they had no real legal aid. So some of the villages got together and came to the conclusion that maybe that they might ask the autumn, their relatives on this side, in Arizona, to kind of help them out with not with they weren't asking for monies. They were asking more for like support, so they could be part of their efforts in obtaining or going after lands that we had lost. And this is why they formed a committee with the villages, picking out the person from each village. At that time, there was only like 7 villages that were recognized as autumn community back then. And then they formed that committee, and the elders came over and talked with the nation about the possibility of them helping them out with their support.
Jose, can I have you talk a little bit about like maybe what was happening in the 1800s that was important?
Okay. That going back, autumn community, especially like Ejidatorio or Pozo Verde, was recognized by the federal or the Mexican government back in the early 1600s. Because I've read articles where there was something that was happening in 1609 that affected the autumn.
This is Maria. Say hi.
Hi. Hello.
So congregaciones, what congregations were? So you were mentioning that the autumn villages were recognized in the 1800s.
As congregaciones, meaning that they recognized a group of autumn that have came together to form a village. It's something like a church congregation where all the worshipers go and they're recognized as part of that church. And it's the same application that applies to the congregaciones of autumn villages.
And why was that an important step?
Because it kind of formed a group of people that were actually trying to better their lives, not and make a better living for their as we do now. Generation coming back.
And so then what happened? So they were recognized as congregaciones, and then what happened?
Then they started forming or gathering the villages that were recognized then, like what right now we're talking about the Pozo Verde, and they came together as a group. And when things happened, a problem came about in that village, they would call a meeting and select sort of like a committee of people that would represent them when they send them to either Caborca or even to Hermosillo, which was a real long trip because back then it was just by horseback.
So, what you were saying is that the villages began to organize what we inform traditional government after they became congregaciones?
Well, the traditional way of thinking or form or working as a village has always been there. I mean, it's not so much recognized legally, but by the Alton people or by the groups of Alton indigenous, they were that was their form of government.
And so then talk a little bit to me about like in the early court battles. Like what do you remember? What history do you remember the early court battles?
The one that we were involved most, that I remember, but there were others before that. But this is the one that sticks out when we were working together as a group when San Francisquito, which is part of the Autumn Village, began to have problems internally. Well, they were, and then they took that case to court, and we did. We were helping them. This was when we had the office in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So I want to keep us back in like in the beginnings, right? So talk to me about the Mexican census in 1922 and why was that important for Pozo Verde?
Okay. In the census of 1922 was taken by the Mexican government to actually find the number of autumn that were in Pozo Verde or Chetacuaje. And the reason for that was that um, doing that was because of the agraria land bases in Mexico. And in Mexico, where did the census for the autumn so they can be part of what they call the agrarian districts. And this is why they wanted to have a census of wanting to know how many autumn were living in Pozo Verde.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the office. So so it was in the 1920s, and then let's talk a little bit about the office for the autumn in Mexico that was in cells. So what do you remember about its creation?
It went back to the same the same reasons that the autumn first came to the nation back in the early 70s. It's because that we're still having problems with land encroachment and mining that was leaving us with less land than we had before. And if I may, I'm going to go back just a little bit on that. It's in 1949, the Mexican government actually took back what's left of the national lands. By national lands, I mean that the lands weren't. There was no ownership. It was lands that could be used by anybody, but not they wasn't theirs. So the autumn had a large base, was living on a large base of national lands, and all that lands that wasn't there at that time was taken back by the Mexican government, and then resold to the ranchers and people that were interested in obtaining more land base in Mexico.
So that was 1949, and then the 1950.
In the 1950s, there was a committee, a group of Mexican officials that came from Mexico City to Caborca to actually find out why all the problems, why all the complaints of autumn with the ranchers, and why there was this big fight about territory. And what happened with Washington, which is an annex of Pozo Verde, was that there were, when they got to Mexico City, the committee from Mexico. Did I double that?
No, that's
I
good.
repeated myself.
No, you're saying that there was a committee that came.
From Mexico City to Caborca.
Uh-huh.
And then from Caborca, there was an official from Caborca that came, that they got as a guide to show them the areas where autumn were. And what happened was the man from Caborca bypassed water. And so it was when the committees Mexico City team went back to Mexico City. They did a report on it, and they said that there were no autumn in Washington because there was what happened was that they didn't reach where Washington was.
And what did that result in?
That was why we have all this problem with our Washington. There's still the struggles of trying to have a legal title to it. And autumn was the Washington was recognized as an autumn village back in 1910, but that didn't count because of all the ranches, that there was no legal title to what we had.
So the struggle for Washam began because it was excluded in around 1949. Okay. Jose, people are asking if you can please share the names of the autumn villages.
Okay. There is a list, and I forgot to bring it with me, about the autumn villages that were there back in the early 1800s. And a lot of those villages have disappeared. And today, there are 15 villages in Sonora that that the nation recognizes as autumn villages. But we have lost a lot of others villages that were in Mexico. The first one that I would name is Pozo Verde. With a few years back, it was Washington was in the next, Pumarito was in the next, Ubabi was next to those Pozo Verde.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one recognized, Pozo Verde was recognized by the Mexican government as an ejido. And Portion, Pumarito, and Ubabi were not. But
what does ejido mean?
Ejido,
What does that mean in Mexico too?
Well, let me go back to the 1922 census. That census was also taken, like I said, to establish a human or population count, but it also was used to decide if they could register that congregation as an ejido. And in 1928, that was actually done. It became an ejido. And an ejido is a group of people that own land as a village, which I think was like 36 hectares to a family. And an ejido meant that whatever amount of land that they gave you, you actually owned it. And you had the right to sell it if and when you wanted to. That's what the ejido is.
What are some problems with that system? What is a danger that the ejido has?
The danger with an ejido, which is fine if the neighbors are all neighborly and everybody's getting along with each other, but that doesn't happen. There's always people that are not happy with what's going on, and in an ejido you can actually sell your parcel to somebody other than an autumn. That means if a Mexican came in and they liked your land and they wanted to buy it, and or in Ejido, you could do that. You could sell it, or you could, or keep it. But that was the danger of why a lot of people, or like I'll name one, Las Norias was in Ejido back in the 70s. Not too long ago, I think in the 90s, they actually be converted to a community, which is a little bit harder to sell because it is a community. If somebody that's a member of that community wants to sell it, their partial, they have to go through the whole community. The community has to agree to let this person sell his partial. So it's a little bit more difficult to sell off your land if your community or your village is under a community status.
Versus in the Ejido.
Yeah, versus with the Ejido.
Okay. Anything more that you want to say about before 1980s history before we move on to the creation of the office?
Well, I just kind of want to mention on what you asked me, Amy, about the villages, or
Yeah.
is that in 1943 there was a person coming from Mexico with a committee, a group of people, and they actually did a tour of all the autumn villages that were there at that time. And some of the villages were here in Arizona, I have to apologize for sometimes I have this problem of forgetting
It's
villages.
okay.
But anyway, he did a tour that he actually came on this side and had named some villages that were here, and he did a report to the Mexican government, and he was explaining to them that the autumn were here and that the Mexican government should help the autumn he named a couple of points, 10, I think there was 10 points that he stressed that the Mexican government worked out with the autumn in Mexico, that were living in Mexico, but that never happened. But I will share that with you in the future. Like I said, this is going to be an ongoing thing. So
Yeah.
I will share that at a later date.
Okay. Can I say something, Marisol?
Yeah.
I just want to kind of follow up with everybody that's just joined us. Thank you for joining us today for our first Jenigida, talking with Jose here, and he is we're in a transition right now in the conversation, but basically we have been having discussions about the autumn communities and what is known now as Mexico, and just some of the events and politics that take place there right now. There's different ways that the communities are working together, and we're going through a timeline right now, and just wanted to catch you up and say that we're glad you're here and all good information. So go ahead and continue. Thank you.
So we want to talk about maybe the creation of the office for the autumn in Mexico. What you remember?
Okay. The autumn in Mexico was formed because, as I mentioned earlier, there was problems in Sonora villages of encroachment, and they just couldn't uh, handle all that problems without a base to work out of. And I wasn't available I wasn't in Sonora at that time, but my understanding is back then the group AIM was pretty popular here in the United States in helping setting up an organization to kind of help the different tribes here with their problems. And from my understanding is there were some on the nation or on the reservation that were part of AIM that helped and supported the autumn problems in Mexico. And out of that, through their efforts and their support for autumn in Mexico, they created an office in cells back in 1983. Yeah, it was 1983 because the office actually opened in 83. The office in Mexico office opened in 83. So through AIM and their support, the office was office in Mexico office was created.
Do you remember what the focus was or what the demands were?
So the office at that time were three. There were three of them. The search of records, and at that time the Bill of Rights, crossing, the autumn bill, and there was another one. Maybe David remembers it, but there was three areas that the office was supposed to work on.
And how long did it stay open?
They shut us down in 1996.
Okay. And what do you consider were some of the achievements, or what were some things that were able to get done because of the office existed?
Well, besides the three, when they started working on I just want to mention too that in 1983, when the office was formed, they didn't really get a full funding to run an actual office and do what an actual office does, and it just was just enough money to keep it afloat, maintain the office, but there was no money for other areas like. And what happened then when the office opened, they did start working on those three areas, but then they found out that the people in Mexico also needed medical aid, and there wasn't anything on their agenda, the Autumn in Mexico office, that would help. So that office actually started to work with Autumn and bringing them across through the nation office to have them attend a hospital here or go to the hospital here, because at that time there's a lot of areas or a lot of places in the autumn villages in Mexico that were inaccessible at certain times of the year. So with the vans and what they used to pick up the autumn helped the autumn then. But it was mostly problems. When you come down to it, was problems that existed in Mexico that also existed here. You know, the schools and roads and housing, health, and nutrition. So it's basically the same problems Autumn in Mexico had that was going on in here over here in the States.
When you say problems, does it mean those are some needs that the Autumn in Mexico had that were the same needs that the Autumn here
Yeah.
had?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about the office?
Well, I just want to conclude with, like I mentioned earlier, there was no real love or real existence or real feelings that to develop an office or the Autumn Mexico office to actually develop it to a level where it would actually function as an office. So in '94 I think was the first year that we actually got a full funding where we could have a chauffeur, we had two vans, and we actually had money to take people to Hermosillo or to Caborca to attend meetings and all that. So 94, 95, and then 96, they shut the door on us.
Was there ever any plans to have an office for the Autumn in Mexico or in Sonora?
It's funny that you say that because the last year in '96, we actually had a plan to open a sister office in Caborca, and we had everything planned out when we had the fundings for that '97, we would be opening a sister office in Sonora, but that never happened.
Okay. So I wanted when we first talked about like the recognition of the traditional Autumn leaders by the nation, and then the different amendments that happened that included more communities.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about the struggles to be recognized by the Hono Autumn Nation as traditional Autumn leaders, and what that meant?
I think when Frank Mariano became the supervisor of the Autumn office, he actually was the one that extended the helping hand to the other western villages in Sonora. And this is when we started getting working with other villages besides the 7 that we had, or 9 at that time. It was 9 villages that we were working with, and the western area included Sonoita, Pinasco, and there's some other villages that on our limits of San Francisco that we started working also. And so this is how this first group was added on through the efforts of Frank Mariano.
When you say added on, what do you mean?
We added on, it was like we added those villages to the Autumn in Mexico as part of the working groups in Sonora.
So as part of the resolution?
No.
Okay.
We did that at a later date.
Okay. So in 1995 was when the traditional Autumn leaders were recognized. And what does it mean to be recognized by the nation?
Before there was a lot of talk in Mexico, the villages, that they wanted to be also, knowing that they were part of the nation and knowing that they were Autumn, they wanted to be recognized as Autumn. And a group came two cells and talked with the chairman at that time about the possibility of the nation recognizing the autumn in Mexico, that were living in Mexico as part of the group, part of the tribe or the nation. And I think this happened because in 1937, when the census was done on this side, actually there were a lot of autumn that were living in Mexico that were here. They were here when the when that census came about in 1937. So, and I guess based on that, they wanted to be recognized as part of the autumn. And what the nation told the autumn, Mexican autumn, was that if there was no record of how would the nation, or how could the nation recognize the autumn, because there was no paper trail. There wasn't any proof, or they had to provide, the autumn Mexico had to provide documents or paperwork to the nation to actually prove to them that they existed, legally existed, through paperwork. So
So the 1937 census that was done here in the U.S. excluded a lot of Atam who were in Sonora at that time.
At that time, yes. And this is why I think, I'm not really sure about that, but I think this is why some of them wanted to be part of that, because they were part of the census.
Okay. And so so let's just talk to me a little bit about talk to us a little bit about the 2005 new resolution for the traditional autumn leaders.
Okay. In 95, the nation, through resolution by the legislative branch, recognized I don't know, I think it was like 12 villages as part of the autumn. And Pitiquito, for some reason, wasn't included in the recognition at that time. So to be recognized again, they did that on their, came to the nation, talked to the nation, the vice chairman, but it took until 2013 before they became known or recognized by the nation. That happened in 2013.
Okay. So I know that you're not really big on titles, but I wanted if you could talk a little bit about your election as lieutenant governor.
Asencio, Palma, and Tone. Let me go a little bit further back. Is that before that, there was a governor in each. Well, not, I won't say governor because there wasn't. There was a leader in each village that worked with the other leaders from different villages, and that was a form of government back then. But then in 1992, the autumn wanted a better organized group of autumn villages, and through the help of the INI at that time, they helped let me go back. I'm losing my thoughts there. INI came, Yeah, I'm trying to think of the
Instituto
name. Excuse me.
Nacional.
Indian Institute. It has a INI is I'm kind of stuck here.
I can Google it.
It's Indian National Institute or something like that. Indian National or National Indian National. I wanted to explain that.
Are they like the BIA of Mexico?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. INI, as we call it, wanted a person that they could go to and talk to about the different happenings in each village. They didn't want to go to each village and find out what the problem was. So they elected oh, Asensio, he was elected to like a regional meeting where all the villages came together and actually had a candidates. And Asensio was picked out to be the governor general of the Ottoman Mexico villages. This was in '92. And during that year, the people, Frank Mariano, Arturo Garcia, and different people that were working with with the office at that time, and I was part of it, but I wasn't working as a staff. When they invited us to join the group in a meeting, they had asked us to help them out, physically with the different things that they did. So we volunteered, my wife and I. So we were working as a volunteer. We weren't actually a paid worker. But anyway, this what created what the people that were working with Assange at that time found that he needed a help with to help him, because there are times that he couldn't go to meetings. So they had another meeting in Sonoita in '93, where they did also a regional meeting, and there were like 4 other people that ran for that position, and then they finally picked me as to be part of be Asensio's helper, and they gave me the title of Lieutenant Governor. So from '93 till 2015, I was the Lieutenant Governor for the Ottoman Mexico.
And then talk a little bit about how you became the general, like the gobernador general, the governor general.
Well, it's in any community or in any district, there's always problems. Uh, there's always people that they don't have the same concepts, or they don't have the same visions as you do, so they split. And this happened in Mexico with the autumn. And it got so it was a disturbing problem, because actually that division that came about wasn't letting us progress. I mean, there was a lot of internal issues and a lot of blaming and problems. So I think in the early around 2012, people started talking about maybe having another governor to keep on, because Philip Felix Anton Asenjo's son was governor, uh, and he passed on in 1912. So that left a void in our governorship. So, and that was why people wanted another governor. And we talked about it and tried to plan for it, but there was always problems that we didn't see that came up, and so we didn't actually have election until 2015, which was done in Caborca. And we invited everybody, even the people that were not part of our organization, but we didn't exclude anybody. So that happened in 2015, and I was picked as the Governor General at that time.
And when did you resign? When did you resign?
Oh, and then I resigned my position in 2019, February.
Okay. So we have about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm gonna ask you, Jose, what would you rather talk about? Would you rather talk about Consejo Tradicional de los Pueblos Indígenas, or would you rather talk a little bit about the journey with Zapatistas?
We can talk about the pueblos.
El Consejo Tradicional?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, during the ongoing problems and everything, we had also been working real closely with the Yaqui tribe back in the 80s when we first uh, joined or became part of the working group in New Mexico office. And through the through the fiestas that they did in San Francisco group, the Yaquis had been coming to their annual celebration. So the people in San Francisco already had a working knowledge or working group with the Yaquis. And we actually started working in trying to organize the other 7 tribes that were the other 7 tribes that were in Sonora, which is the Autumn, the Kickapoos, the Ojarillo, the Seris, the Mayos, and the Cocopas, and there's one more, the Pimas. So with the idea of forming a tribal, intertribal organization, which we finally did in '96 when we brought the eight tribes together as Consejo Tradicional del Pueblos Indios. And we also extended, when we became the traditional council, we extended our outreach to the people in southern Mexico, and also trying to make a more compact organization where we could actually be working as a large international or a large internally known organization in Mexico, which worked out fine for a few years, but because of the crisis financially and the problems that came about here in the States and in Mexico, we couldn't control or we couldn't maintain that level of working group. So we slowly came apart, you know. It's still there. I mean, the office is still there, but it's going back to one or two tribes that work with it.
I think we still have a little bit of time. So do you want to talk a little bit about your journey with the Zapatistas? Huh? Quinta? Or Quinta? Okay. He wants to talk about Autumn Quinta.
This is my pet
Your passion.
my passion of when I became the lieutenant governor, I saw a lot of things that make me think that if we were known, if the Ottoman Mexico became a tribe, a non-tribe in Mexico, they could have a better chance of working with the Mexican government in obtaining or getting projects for them and for their kids. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the same problems in Mexico as they do here in the housing, education, nutrition, and all that is there. And there's a lot of discrimination that exists in Mexico about helping the autumn or the autumn descendants. So I started talking with Blake Gentry in 2012 about maybe we should actually start looking and try to form an autumn group in Mexico. And what we found out is that, you know, the Mexican will recognize an autumn tribe. So we switched and said, well, if we build a large group, they have to work with us because of, you know, it'll be a large group. And this is where the idea of the Quinta came in. And I think our first project that we worked with toward the Quinta was in San Manuel in Oaxaca. And then from there we went to Pinasco and Caborca, then Quitovaca. Sonoita did their own. We were there with Sonoita, but with Pinasco did their own. And the autumn descendants was San Matilda, San Manuel, Magdalena, Imuris, and Hermosillo. That was our last project at Hermosillo. And my understanding is they did recognize the autumn descendants in this last resolution that came out.
You talk about the importance of the autumn descendants.
I also found when we started working with autumn that there is a lot of discrimination against the autumn descendants. But I believe what I based my logic or my will to work with them is that because the descendants all that we worked with are all in that area where history says that the autumn lived, and which is a pretty large area. As you all know, autumn, that territory autumn is pretty well known, I think, but it comes down from Phoenix back then to Hermosillo. And I do know because this is just on the side, in 1950, 55 or somewhere in there, we got to know an autumn or we didn't know at that time that he was an author in Eloy, where my parents had bought some land and we were living there. And one time my dad asked this gentleman, he was kind of an elderly gentleman, where he was from because he spoke Autumn. And he kind of spoke Autumn with an accent. So when he says, yeah, I'm from Hermosillo, and then he went on to explain that there was a large group of Autumn in Hermosillo who isolated themselves apart from the main group of people that were in Hermosillo. So with that in mind, I started asking the elders in the San Manuel and in San Matilda where all these Autumn descendants are, and they went on to name villages that were known as Autumn communities in Sonora. So, and now I almost forgot. And in the 70s, when we were in Washington, we had meetings every month on the second Sunday of every month. And there was a lady, there was a gentleman that came to our meetings, and we found out he was also from Hermosillo. And I had asked him if he was the same, like the first gentleman told us back in the 50s. And he said it had changed a lot, and now they were mixing with the main group of people that were living in Hermosillo.
Anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Others, no.
Okay, so we're going to end up with that, and this is just a picture of us working in one of the communities. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and exit the screen, and then we can open it up for discussions.
Okay. You said you had a picture?
Oh,
Or
that was the last picture. Was
okay.
working.
Okay. All right. Sapo Joe, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a lot and it was fast. The hour went by pretty fast. So we are recording this session and we'll make it available to everyone after today. She asked about the PowerPoint. I don't know if that's something you're sharing, Marisol or Lucy. You can ask them. All right. Okay.
Any questions or?
Yeah. So we allocated about half an hour from now until 12:30 for questions and discussions. Thank you everybody for joining us today for our first Hemajkam Jenigida, which is basically the people's meeting. We decided to organize this to continue having discussions about border issues on Autumn Jewett, on Autumn land, and thought that it would be good to have our first Jenig with Jose here, because for myself and I know a lot of others, he's always been really supportive of young people, especially young Autumn, who are learning and being willing to sit down with us and share the history, because you know we're the ones that are continuing the work and we need to understand our issues and where we've come from, and you know how to continue moving forward. And so thank you, Joe, for always being supportive and be willing to share and being open, especially to doing something like this, where we're having, you know, we're taking our Jenigida online to a different platform. But I think, you know, that also gives us a lot of opportunities and possibilities to have discussions like this. And we look forward to the next couple of sessions where we'll continue to discuss all of these different things. And Joe shared a lot, Jose shared a lot, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of that history, especially for Hemajkam in Mexico. And so for everybody listening, you know, we traditional Hemajkam land spans south to Hermosillo, Mexico, so they say, just the general area, up north to Scottsdale, Phoenix area, east to the San Pedro River, east of Tucson, and west to the Sea of Cortez. And when the border was established, it literally divided our lands and our people in half. And so those things still affect us today, and in many, many different ways. And that's some of what Jose shared today. It's the politics, it's the families, it's the culture, and there's so much more to share around that. And I'm sure that people have questions. And also for the Hemajkam that are on that are here at the Jenig today, I invite you to share or share any thoughts or to add to what Jose shared today, especially you, David, if you have anything to share. But also we want to give David time in the future to also share about his work. So, you know, this is giving us a good idea of what our conversations will be from here. And before we move on, I just wanted to share the document that Will shared. Thank you, Will. And these are some of the communities that Jose was talking about here. Let me see. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the names of some of the communities. Did you put this together, Will, or do you know who put this together?
It's from a Jose article written by Jose and a few other people, actually.
Okay, I like that title. Indigenous Survival and Settler Colonial Disposition on the Mexican Frontier. So we have the communities here: Hemajkam, Sean Oidak, Arabichkin, did I say that right? Kawud, Joey Kush, and then also if they're recognized by resolution of the Legislative Council of the Hemajkam Nation, agricultural communities with or without an annex or with or without a title, recognized by resolution, communities affected by paramilitary activities in the border area, Hemajkam from rural communities mixed in with Hemajkam and original urban communities, and the communities of descendants not recognized by resolution of the Legislative Council. So there's just, I think this is very, it gives us an idea to help us understand what Joe was talking about earlier, and just how we have to deal with things politically, whether it's with the Hemajkam Nation or whether it's with the Mexican government. And yeah, I've had to also learn a lot, and I guess really understand how things work, especially for our communities in Mexico. And I really appreciate what Joe has shared around this. So I just wanted to share that. And does anybody have any questions or would like to share anything right now? David? You're on mute, David.
You're gonna have to
Or I
unmute.
can do that.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're figuring it out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh,
Okay, I just wanted to thank Joe Garcia for giving a lot of important history on and the work that took place way back then up until now when he mentioned that he resigned from his governorship with the traditional leaders. I guess I just want to let the audience know that, that the last resolution that was passed by the Legislative Council have now recognized the former Vice Chairman Berlin Jose as the governor, and Frank Valenzuela as the lieutenant governor. So that was done by resolution. Don't really know to what extent the new governorship is working towards the people in Mexico. I do know that there was another group that was created in Sonora, which is the Supreme Autumn Council, which was a spin-off when some of the people felt that they weren't being represented. And even though the Legislative Council passed the new governorship, they don't have a voice at the table in the tribal council, but they are providing assistance to the traditional autumn leaders. But let me just go back to the chairman of at that time, the Papago tribe, the Segundo, the late Segundo, which basically pushed the tribal council back then along with a lot of the elders on both sides of the border. And he mentioned the American Indian movement. You can only think of my brother, Robert Cruz, back then when he was still in high school, then eventually went on to college and was still assisting the Autumn people on both sides of the border. When I was sitting on the tribal council back in 95 to 2003, I was one of the 22 members who supported by resolution to recognize the traditional Autumn leaders. And at that time, this was Sencio Antone, and the governor and the lieutenant governor was Joe Garcia. And throughout that support from the Chucutu district, that really pushed the efforts of creating an office. But I have to tell your audience that it was the tribal council that actually dissolved the Autumn Mexico program. And it goes back to, there was a lot of politics that was involved in that. There was a huge hearing that that was held at the tribal council, and it was at that time that the motion was made and seconded, and it was voted to shut down the office. And since then, there is no office in cells or anywhere else. I don't know what the new traditional leaders are working towards, but it was talked about even with the nation, was to open up a new office that was looking at the Pinasco at that time. Of course, that never happened. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I just want to thank Amy for your efforts, but also Marisol, who I met by way of Joe Garcia, who actually did a lot of work with some of the members of the traditional communities way back then, and is still doing good work, just as you are, Amy. So I want to thank both of you for opening this up, because it really says a lot and gives a lot of history, and there's just not enough time to go into a lot of that history, how it came about. So thank you so much.
David.
Well, we want to make time, and I think, you know, when we talked about having this, we talked about how everybody has at least a little bit more time to sit and listen and to participate in discussions like this. And so we're really glad for everybody that joined us today. Does anybody have any other questions or anything to discuss before we wrap up here? We have about 15 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Hi.
Thank you for having this call. My name is Zamra Salamon, and my family's I'm from Yuma, which is traditional Hemajkam territory, but also there's a lot of O'odham descendants from Mexico and from Gila River who went there to work in the mines. So thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to listen and learn. I was just wondering how O'odham in Mexico are doing right now with the health pandemic, what the needs are for villages out there. I know health care is kind of hard to get to.
Can you answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think with the problem that's going on with coronavirus, I think right now, and I think the nation is doing some of that. Is, you know, like they need food, they need help and support in that, because I've gotten calls of wanting people to donate to a certain village, but like I said, I'm not much involved with the O'odham in Mexico as I used to be. When I resigned, I just stepped back and relaxed. So, but I think that's the main problem right now with what's going on is nutrition.
So, so currently I am working with an O'odham descendant group from San Manuel de Ocuca, and he's Javier's,
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, Javier's son, and he's been trying to organize like his own communities. He's been doing some fundraising, and he's been able to provide food dispensary to 300 families in 4 communities. And the communities that he's working with is San Manuel de Ocuca, La Sangre, San Jose. Actually, it's just 3, sorry. And so he's been organizing, and so we're trying to support some of those efforts. I'm trying to set up a online auction of some of my paintings and maybe some of my jewelry that I make to provide some more aid for him. They don't really need a lot. He was telling me that with $200 he could feed about 125 families, with basic food, which is rice, lentils, beans, sardines, a carton of powdered milk for the children. What else did he say? Flour for tortillas. I'm not a cook, so hold on. Oil. You're a cooking oil. He laughs because he knows I don't cook.
Marisol, let us know if there's a way that you could let us know how we can support Daniel and support you. If there's a link or anywhere to send donations or anything like that, please, let us know.
Yes, absolutely. I'll send. I think I'll set it up through through Facebook as an online auction. If you guys have things also that you can donate, that we can auction off and try to get some money, because I really do think that even though we're supporting a lot of different causes through this pandemic, I think that we have a big impact with not that much money in a lot of the communities in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send you that information, Amy, and then if you could share it out.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
So,
thank you for asking that question. Any other questions or discussions? It's open to anybody. It's a safe space. We're glad to answer anything from O'odham and non-O'odham. This is an opportunity to learn.
Hi everyone, this is Leilani.
Hey Leilani.
To hear you and Marisol throwing down all your knowledge. It was so beautiful to hear just everything. I love just hearing about your work. I just wanted to know what were the results of the cuenta, about the numbers of how many O'odham were recognized in Sonora with that.
Can you repeat that again? You cut off.
Okay, I did. So with the Autumn, with the Quinta, with the census that you all took in 2018, what were the results of that? How many Autumn folks were recognized? Has it come out about yet?
So I think there's a couple of things. So the Autumn Quinta is to gather the information to later then push for recognition through the Mexican side. So that extra push hasn't happened yet. We're still in the middle of collecting. But do you know any numbers, Jose?
No, no, I don't. I haven't talked to Blake. I think he has a record on how many people there are. I'm not sure.
And just something that Jose didn't talk about is that one of the reasons why he wanted to do this is because, was it the CDE that said that there was like only 500 Autumn in Sonora?
No, 300.
300, even worse, that there were only 300 Autumn in Sonora. And the way that some of the organizations work in Mexico is like you need like a certain amount of members of a community to be able to channel projects to communities. And so the Autumn were excluded, but also systematic, right? Like they never really updated that 300 Autumn in Sonora, and that was from the 1970s. So they had that number over and over, and so that was one of the ways that the Autumn in Sonora were excluded from funneling projects from the Mexican government institutions. So there's definitely more than 500. Yeah, I mean, I think definitely more. I think we were close to the 1,300 or more, at least.
Mhm.
We have at least 800, yeah, 800 tribal, what is it? Tribal carriers, meaning that they have their the Autumn ID. That are in Sonora, at least 800. So just with that, we have more than 300. And then if you include all the other ones that submitted a documentation tracing their Autumn ancestry and the Autumn descendants, which from what I know, this is one of the few times that there's been a movement to really include the Autumn descendants as part of a tribe in Mexico for recognition. So the last push to make the push to be considered a tribe in Mexico hasn't been done yet. I think we're still collecting data.
Okay, great, thank you, and yeah, good luck on all that work. Especially with all this COVID, but just keep us in the loop how to be really supportive of all your efforts.
Mhm. Thank you for your question. We can take one more if anything. If not, we'll wrap it up.
I have one question just along those same lines. Is there an archives or a repository that you guys have been able to use for collecting data for people for census purposes in Mexico?
I think I'm gonna ask a little bit more clarifying questions. Can you give me some examples? I don't know the terminology, or I can tell you our process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might just be easier.
That might just be easier, yeah.
So we're not pulling from any national, meaning Mexican national database. Like we have our own database. So we go to village and we hold what we call the Autumn Quinta. And then beforehand, they know exactly the documentations that we're looking for, and they bring photocopies. And so then we go through the survey, and then if there's any questions about their autumnness, then those are put aside. And then those are put aside for a committee to review later. But the ones who are, pretty straightforward, meaning that the traditional autumn leader knows that they're autumn, or that they have their tribal ID card, or that they can trace their ancestry either through birth certificates, or sometimes we also accept documents like Ejidatorio, like that Jose was talking. And so we accept those, and then the traditional leader from each community signs off on them. So it's really community-based, not your typical like somebody going, door to door that doesn't know the community. This is all done by people from the community that know the community. So each community member has a technical support. And this technical is in charge of, after we leave, continuing the process and also uploading all that information to a database that we have. Now, I don't know all the information about the database, but I know that we have a database that we pay for, that all that information is there and is being stored until we're ready to do the big push. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I keep on like moving the computer over and over. Hide it. Keep going that way.
Okay. Oh, wait. David, are you saying? Hold on, David. Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, I have a question. So, having said that you're using this database, and in terms of how to recognize the O'odham people in Sonora, are you using the same format as the nation?
No,
with
because
this family tree form that has to be filled out.
that is one option, but we have many more because our goal is really also to include descendants. So as I mentioned, sorry.
Has there been any follow-up on even those that live west of the southwest border? Because I do remember we were meeting with the O'odham people even in Baja California and Yuma area and Tecate when we were pushing for the citizenship there.
Yeah. I can add as oh sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I can add as someone from Yuma that the nation came and did oral histories with our families in the 80s during that whole process that maybe David is talking about. And the copy of those documents are in the tribal archives in the Cultural Center. I've been trying to get access to them because they were never given back to our elders. So our elders never got copies of those, our descendants in Yuma. And we're in a process right now in Yuma of trying to map out our descendants, and people want to know what their, they want to reconnect with their original villages in Mexico. That's kind of the part of it. You know, a lot of the O'odham in Yuma identify as, you know, kind of O'odham and Mexican. And so there's that cultural mix there. But if I can assist in any way, I read both English and Spanish and have done some of the archival work. So I'd offer my assistance in that, if that would help anyone in Mexico.
Yes, absolutely. Like we did.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've gone as far as San Luis, but just because again, like a lot of this takes well, it's volunteer based. It also takes money to travel, and it also you know, when we arrive in each village, we also do a training to make sure that there's a technical ready. So definitely, I think it's worth talking about how to organize to include to include all the villages and communities that you talked about, because I think the most important thing is to show that there are a significant amount of O'odham left, right, and that we should be recognized by the Mexican government, and the Mexican government gives us rights, right? That right now that right now we can't really defend our rights because we're not recognized. I think
Okay.
I know what's happening. I'm pushing.
Okay, we'll wrap up and we'll continue these conversations. I hope that everybody that joined us today continues to come back and participate and listen and learn. Autumn and non-Autumn alike, just everybody who's here. I'm sure whether it's you know someone or you care, you're interested, you want to help, you want to support. Thank you for sharing your time and coming to this this gathering, this meeting. And I just want to say we decided to call it the Hemajkam Jenigida because it's the people, it's the communities, it's the traditional leaders, it's young people. We're not nations officials, we're not elected officials, but we are community organizers, long time, people who are just doing work. And for myself and others who are a part of this, we really appreciate elders like Joe and David and others who take the time to sit us down exactly like this. And this is why we wanted to do this, was this is what we have to go through as young people, to sit down with our elders and to listen, simply listen, and not just hear them, but listen, because this is part of our history. And we don't want that history to be lost. It's really important, especially for us Hemajkam, the new generation, to know these things, especially as we go into this work to help defend our communities and help protect our land and our resources and our people. And there's been a lot happening, and for people who are Autumn, who are our age, who are in our early 30s, mid 30s, we are the last generation of Autumn to know what it's like without Border Patrol, without the checkpoints and all these different things. And so I feel like it's my job and our job to be that bridge, especially for the ones that are younger than us, for them to know how these changes came about, because it wasn't always like this. And especially to maintain our connections with our relatives, our Hajan on the other side of the line, because that's our land. It's Autumn land. Before Mexico and the United States existed, it's Autumn land. And what are our inherent rights? What are our rights? There's a lot of historical, political information that Joe shared. So thank you, Joe, again, for your time and for being with us. And I'm going to give you a plug and say that Joe is broadcasting from La Andita, from the restaurant, where they have good mole and everything. Everything is good at La Andita on 4th Avenue in Tucson, Arizona. So everybody stop by and visit the family. Always good food and good service. So I had to say that. Yeah. All right. Well, the next Jenigida will be in the next week or so, and it's going to feature many more Autumn organizers who have been working on these Autumn border issues in different contexts. And so it'll be more of a panel, be facilitated. We'll be talking about more current events such as the border wall, the integrated fixed towers, and other things. So we look forward to that next discussion. We put out this meeting on the platform, Hemajkam Rights Network. It's a collective that was started back in 2002. And we have a pretty wide base on our Facebook. And so we just decided to use that page to put the information out, because that was the fastest way to reach a lot of people. And so if you see well, I encourage you to follow the page, Hemajkam Rights Network, TOHRN on Facebook, and you can find the information there. We'll be sharing the links to the next meetings, the next Jenigida. So again, thank you everybody for sharing your Saturday with us. Have a good rest of your day. And the session is being recorded, so we'll figure out how to make that available to those who weren't able to be here with us today, or for everyone who wants to follow up. So, Sapo, the Upaminye, take care.
Thank you, amen.
The Upaminye.